2006 LX470, we are going to tackle a rear water bypass leak. That's back here, thereabouts. I'll show you a clip of that leak right now. And we're just going to dive right in. So first step, negative battery cable, undone. The repair manual says to discharge fuel pressure, so I'm going to do that before I get into the fuel stuff, but I'm going to wait for clarification on that. It seems like there might be an easier way to do it than what the repair manual states, so I'm going to do a little research on that and come back to that later. For now, we're just going to do some of the intake plumbing, just the stuff that's going to help see more. I'm sort of doing an overall investigation on this engine as well, so any little hint of a leak or extra viewpoint is helpful. So we know we're going through quite a bit of coolant. I've topped this up twice now, driven it for maybe 100 miles total, and we're back down, clear down to nothing. So definitely losing coolant somewhere. I think it's just that rear bypass, but as we go through this, we're just going to keep an eye out for any other potential leak points, and we should be able to capture everything. So I'm going to dive on in here and just record progress as we take apart the top side. Okay, we've got this first section of intake loose between the filter and the throttle body. We've got two hose clamps, 1, 2, that was around there. We've got ventilation hose, I believe that is, right there. And you can see that one's cracked, so we're going to replace that. Another hose there that we just slip right off. And finally there's one more right down there. The outlet right there. And then we've got two fasteners, one there and then one right down there. Those are 10mm bolts. The hose clamp should also be 10mm, and that's it. Then that just comes right out. Okay, I just dove back there with the camera again just to be sure, because it looks really clean from this top side. But no, sure enough, there's the leak there. It really looks like it's that gasket, that bypass gasket. It's moist, it's wet. I think that's it. So we're going to soldier on here. I'm not sure how much further I really want to go before draining coolant and making sure fuel is depressurized. So we'll see what's up next. We're going to go ahead and drain coolant. I'm going to recycle some of this, reuse that. I know it was replaced recently, and this stuff's good for about 100,000 miles, so no need to discharge all that and not use it. So collecting that through the petcock there, and I'll fill that at least, and that's going to drain really slow. I'll let that go while I figure out what I'm going to do with the fuel. Okay, here's my method of cracking loose the fuel line, releasing pressure. Just going to do it right at the filter right there. And tools for that, that's a 19 and a 14, so we're going to use a 14 line wrench, looks like that, and then just a regular 19 open end. Took a bit of pressure, but certainly doable. I'm just going to let that sit right now. It's just sort of real lightly venting gasoline. Going to let that just do its thing. And then here, we're almost full of coolant. I'm just going to fill this up, close the petcock, and call that good. They say to drain the whole thing. Obviously, the instructions are kind of just bland. Drain coolant. Well, I don't want to drain the entire system. These are the instructions for the air pump, which is going to be somewhat similar to what we're doing. So you can see drain engine coolant. Well, yeah, I don't want to drain the whole thing. So we're going to drain a bit. What I think is enough. Really, we just need to drain the volume that would be consumed above that rear bypass, which, you know, level-wise is, I don't know, right about here. So I think it's maybe right about even with the thermostat. So we're draining from the radiator. I'm not sure if the rest of the coolant system is connected. There are drains on the block. If I had this on the lift, then I might do that because that'd be easy, but obviously it's underneath right now, and I don't really feel like digging underneath. So we're going to see if this works. You can see I've got the radiator cap loose, so that drains nice and easily. Alright, there you go. That's about all the fuel that came out. Really very, very little. The instructions in the repair manual would lead you to believe that there might be a lot that comes out, but really there's not. It's very, very little. Couple small pieces here, removing the VSV assembly. That's for the air injection, I believe. And then we've got the fuel purge line, VSV or similar there. And then a connector for that there. And we're just going to work our way around and remove everything that's obviously connected to this. Trying to follow the service manual as best I can, but I don't have every page of that yet. I'm still waiting on my manual in the mail. So I just have a few tidbits of info for the VVTI. It's got a lot of extra equipment. So we're just going piece by piece, removing what we can from the top. When we remove the manifold, we have to be very careful we don't let anything drop in. So I'm trying to take my time to clear everything away now. One more item removed, that's the fuel line on the back. There's that orange clip there. And the way this thing works, this clip, I'm going to leave it on there. That clip, you've got to spread the flanges on the side, and it will come off of this. So you're trying to push the orange cap that way off. And then you're left with this, and you squeeze the two blue ends really hard and then pull, and it comes loose. Kind of a nifty design, also kind of a pain. So, now I think where we stand, we need to remove this fuel hose. And I'm not positive if we can just pull it off there, or if I need to just undo it at the filter here. I'm a little unsure. I don't want to force that. I don't want to break that. But then, I think we are just about good. We got the wire harness undone back there. I'll show you that location of the bolts later on. But we are very, very close. I've got to undo the throttle body. I undid the clip. I don't need to do that. I'm going to keep the throttle body here, and I'll just replace the gasket. So the throttle body will come off because I don't want to mess with these coolant hoses. So we're going to leave those alone. I think that's it. I really think that's it. We've got the fuel. I believe that's the pressure regulator or damper, one of the two. But either way, that is staying on. I think everything else is out of the way. This wire block doesn't move a whole lot, but it should be able to shimmy back just enough because we've unbolted that. So I believe we are just about ready to remove the manifold with the fuel rails. We're going to take the fuel rails along for the ride. So that'll include injectors and the rails, obviously, and the fuel hardline here. But that's about it. I think we're almost there. Let's find out. Okay, we have the manifold loose. It is moving. So that's good. That's step one. Now we need to make sure that when we lift it out, we don't ruin anything, and that nothing falls into the intake that we can avoid. The wiring harness is kind of up to you how much you want to get it out of the way. I'm going to try and go with the minimum amount and just sort of hope that I don't regret that. But I think we can get it out of the way. I think it's enough out of the way. The one thing I am going to do, I'm going to remove the fuel damper or the pressure regulator or whatever that is. I think that's the damper. And the reason is this pipe, which has some residual fuel in it, needs to get out that way. And I think once I lift up that manifold, I'm not going to want to set it back down. So I'm going to try and kind of swing that out all in one movement. And I think that's going to be a lot more difficult to do when I have to worry about this. The damper's pretty easy to take off. I just need some new gaskets, which are on the way. Yeah, it's an open-ended wrench. It is a 19, I believe. Correction, that is a 22. Pretty easy to crack loose, and then we can just spin it off by hand, and then there are two gaskets. We'll just try not to lose those, although those are one-time use. Do not reuse those crush gaskets, or crush washers if you prefer. Hey, look at this. we got it all off. We get a nice view of our gory leak. We get a view of all kinds of crap that's around the intake manifold that we're going to have to clean like crazy. Holy cow, look at this. My goodness. We've also got an interesting view of the starter there. So here's the intake manifold, which was full of gas all over the place, which was good because I needed to clean the floor anyway, I suppose. But a lot of gasoline came out. So taking a look at the gaskets. I had a heads up on this after reviewing some threads on the forums from I think 2001 LC. He noticed some leaking gaskets as soon as he removed the intake, and sure enough, holy cow, look at that. So that's a relatively sealed cylinder. Maybe that one, maybe that one. Maybe not that one. Probably not quite that one. Not this one. Definitely not that one. And definitely not that either. I took it off pretty cleanly, so I don't think that's from hitting debris again. I think that's really just how it was. So leaking, presumably a lot of air. So that should help getting that sealed up. Quick note on the gasket here. I'm looking at what did seal and what did not, and it's pretty obvious why the ones did not seal. If you look at the height, if I can focus, there you go. So the bright orange is the area where the gasket's been good and sealed, and you can see it's proud of the plastic. But then if you look at the areas that are not so clean, there you go, like that guy right there, the gasket is at or below the surface of that plastic, so it just wasn't sticking out at all, making no contact with the mating surface and not sealing. They're not sealing very well. And it's kind of the same case as you just go around here. You can see really very, very little protrusion on that one. And that's where we see some evidence of leaking. On this side, it looks a little bit better, but on that outside, that outer edge just does not look good. This one looks fantastic, but it was kind of popped out, so a little deceiving there. But anyway, very small margin for error. And the new gaskets are either thicker from the start or they're just newer and fresher, but I'm feeling good about our ability to seal after this when we have new gaskets. We're diving in closer and closer. This is the starting section, or the starter section of the manual. So just give you a second to review that. Pause the video if you want to take notes. Okay. Next page. You can see torque values, and then you see the starter exploded view there. So removal. Discharge fuel pressure. I'll just do the same thing. Give you a second to pause if you want to see that. There you go. So we're removing it now, and we need to remove we've done the manifold assembly, we've got the bypass pipe subassembly, and I'm actually not sure how they want you to do that. There's an O-ring, I guess it slides in, but you can't see that. And I'll show you what I mean. That's hidden by the front water bypass, which they don't even show on the diagram, but it's hidden sort of under there. So I don't really want to mess with that. I'm going to see if I can get away without doing that. I think we can remove that and then get some clearance to get to what we need. Okay, here you can see the bypass pipe. That's the lightly corroded pipe there. And you can see it disappears in there. And apparently that's just an O-ring seal, but I don't really want to mess with that if I don't have to. So we're going to disconnect that, undo the mount, and then that should have a little bit of play in it, hopefully enough that we can get this bypass joint out. So there's the bypass joint, and you can see it still has fresh, wet liquid coming out at that gasket seam. So I'm pretty positive that's our failure point, although there is coolant residue just sort of all over, so on that side as well. but I think it's all from that, and it's just been dripping down. So I think everything's starting there. Yeah. So that's the plan. Let's see how it works. Okay, here we can see we've got more coolant seeping out now that I've cracked those loose. So we can be pretty sure that we've got more coolant back there. So I'm going to leave those the way they are. If it's just going to drip that slow, it's not a big deal. But I don't really want to pour coolant all over the backside there. So if I drain the engine block, that should help. So I'm going to crawl under there, see if I can see the drain and easily get to that and crack that open so we can drain more. Okay, here's the deal. I looked down for the drain. You can see it. It's in the very... Well, you can't see it. I could see it. It's in the very back of the block, on this side at least. And it's going to be really tough to get to cleanly, and I just don't want to deal with it. So I think we're just going to drain it. There's also a ton of coolant residue already back there that needs to be cleaned off. So I'm not going to add a whole lot of new residue that's not already there. So, yeah. We're just going to be messy and make it happen. Okay, we got everybody out. That wasn't too hard. We got 2 nuts over there, 2 nuts over there. Those are all out. We can see that it's weeping a bit more. However, it's not really gushing. It's kind of the same as it was. So I'm not really sure what's going to happen when this breaks loose. I don't think a whole lot, but I've certainly been wrong before. I don't know. I'm going to have to look at the steps. It feels really solid right now, so I don't know if that's just the gaskets holding it on or if I need to remove other components first. Interesting. Well, let's go look at the book. Okay, so we've got the bypass joint unbolted at this point, but we do have hose connected there. I believe that's a bypass hose for the air injection system, I think. I don't really know. But that is holding it on quite firmly, so that needs to come off. What I've heard is that is really, really difficult to remove, and that's what I'm seeing. It's hard as a rock. I mean, it's so hard, it does not, it's supposed to be a flexible hose, but I cannot move it or flex it hardly at all. So I think we're going to have to cut that, but I want to be sure I have the replacement before I do that, or at least I've got more time on it. So I'm not going to do anything with that right at this moment, but I think that'll be our next step. I'm just going to leave it here, collect some of that coolant residue with the shop towels, and come back soon. I'm thinking I do want to replace the O-ring on this guy. I'm putting some torque on it, just moving it around, and it would be nice to get that out of the way. So I think I'm going to make sure that a local dealer has the O-ring, and then we will take that out and replace the O-ring. Well, I went ahead and pulled that pipe, and, well, it's kind of hard to see, but, well, there's coolant everywhere. It was definitely full of coolant. So there's coolant everywhere there, and as you can probably imagine, there's now coolant everywhere down here. So I captured some, a pretty small amount, but there you go. Short of draining the block, no real way to avoid that, I don't think. So, yeah, I'll get a new O-ring and we'll do that. It seemed like that had to get out of the way. So now that's out of the way. And I realized this rear bypass is held on, the switches there are attached to that, and those joints right there, there's a flange there and there's a flange there with bolts. They are obviously holding that together and holding it in place. So I need to get rid of that, and then I need to undo this pipe there, and then we should be in much better shape and ready to pull that rear bypass. Okay, tried a couple different things here. I think we found a solution. So on the back side, there's the flange right there where I'm pointing, and then right there are 2 fasteners that fasten those, I think they're switches for the air injection system. It fastens that to the bypass. So there's a gasket there, and then there's a gasket there, and a gasket there, and then a gasket there. So we've disconnected the switches from the bypass, and I think that's going to give us some flexibility. And if you watch what's going on now, we've got some movement. Now we're still attached over on this side, obviously. And I think it's going to be easier to break that loose without damaging the hose if I slip this, the bypass, off of those studs first. Just not quite sure if I can do it. And then we've also got this air intake hose, but that I can go ahead and cut. So I'm going to cut that right now. Okay, we got it off. That was hard fought. That was not easy. But we're done with that part. So this side over there, that was sealing well. Gasket still looks a little gnarly, but of course that'll get replaced. This side was not sealing well, and you can't really see much evidence from here necessarily. But if I go over now to the part that was removed, so this was the good one, and you can see that sealing surface still looks pretty good, real smooth. Then you look over here, not so much. So we can tell that we weren't getting a lot of sealing done there, and that's where the failure occurred along that line. And you can see all the residue was coming down this way. Almost makes you think that's a coolant line, but that's actually air. And part of what allowed me to get this off was just demolishing this hose. This is really stiff. I mean, it looks a little flexible now, but it's very stiff for a rubber hose, and it's thick. So just kind of chopped that up to get it off. So now that's off, and we've got a little more space in here, a little more room to maneuver around. And now we need to, I guess we're probably just about done as far as removal. The starter's going to come out, and I think I can get access to the starter bolts now. They're back there. It's going to be a pain, but I think we can do it. And we'll just clean everything up. You can see the coolant level is right up to there because we did not drain the block. If you drain the block, you'd have coolant out of there. We would have done that had we just had more time to make that convenient, but we didn't, so we just let it all pour out. And then, of course, we'll get a new O-ring for the seal that's up there from that coolant pipe and get the new starter on and move on. I think we're getting there. Starter is now free, for the most part. We still have our cable attached, the 12-volt feed. However, it is loose, and we are free, and we can now kind of rotate it, and oh, look at that. Look how easy the access is now. So we'll get that undone, and now I can see, looks like there's a little retainer there, and that's why it wasn't coming undone. Really, yeah, there we go. Jeez. Nearly impossible to get that in situ like they recommend. I don't know why they recommend that, but there it is, out of place now, and now we can remove it. Nice and easy, piece of cake, see? Okay, we got the air valves out for the air injection pump to give us more access for the starter. And that was a pain. The lower bolts on those flanges are pretty tough to get. So I've got this topside creeper that I got really just for this job because this is just miserable trying to climb into the engine bay, literally climb into the engine bay. So this makes it a lot easier. But anyway, got those valves out. Now we can get access to all the starter bolts. There are two main mounts and then I think one for the wiring harness block kind of deal there. And then we have at least one connector and then one cable for the starter. And then we should have that out and we can put the new one in right away. Starter removal specifics here: disconnect the connector, remove the nut and disconnect the starter cable, remove the bolt and disconnect the engine wire protector, and then remove the two bolts and starter. And the diagram here. So we've got, that's the starter itself. Here you go. So starter assembly. There's the cable nut. There's the engine block holder. And then the 2 bolts there coming from that back side. So looking at the starter here, I'm actually going to go out of order. But there's the block, the electrical block connector there. And then there's starter bolt there, and then another one right down there that you can't see, but I can feel. And then we've got our main cable down there in the valley, and then the connector right there. But they're all kind of hard to get to. So I think what I'm going to do is try and do this, then the starter mount bolts, and then I can kind of shimmy the starter up towards me and get to those other connectors more easily. Okay. This was the winning combo for this guy. This was pretty tough, more so than I thought. You really just got to muscle it in there. 14mm socket, regular length socket with a little wobble extension on there. If you use a deep socket, it doesn't work. You can't get in there. If you use just the normal socket, it's too close and you don't have clearance to get in there and it doesn't work. So, took a little bit of finagling. That's a flex head ratchet. I think you might require the flex head because otherwise this is going to come up into the wiring harness there. But there you go. The 2 starter fasteners are now broken loose and we can start unthreading to remove this beast. Starter is now free for the most part. We still have our cable attached, the 12-volt feed. However, it is loose and we are free, and we can now kind of rotate it, and oh, look at that. Look how easy the access is now. So we'll get that undone, and now I can see, looks like there's a little retainer there, and that's why it wasn't coming undone. Really, yeah, there we go. Jeez. Nearly impossible to get that in situ like they recommend. I don't know why they recommend that, but there it is, out of place now. And now we can remove it. Nice and easy. Piece of cake. See? So I pulled the plunger out of this old starter just to see what we were looking at. And, you know, I'll be damned. It looks good. It looks really good. There's hardly any erosion of those contacts there. And here's the plunger. Oops, yeah, sorry, there's the plunger. It looks really good. Really good. I'm kind of amazed. I mean, if there was a way for me to verify that it looked like that, I probably wouldn't have bothered taking it apart. But we've come this far, so we're just going to throw in the new remanufactured Toyota, which should be just 100% good to go. But it looks like this is going to be a great backup, perhaps, but that seems kind of silly with a brand new starter, so I think I may see if anybody else wants this, because that looks just really nice. Very smooth. You can see teeth are real nice, not real worn. Of course, coolant residue on there, but you can see it didn't make it much past there. Looks quite good. I'm actually impressed. I did not expect it to look nearly that nice. 217,000 miles. Who'd have guessed? Just for good measure, a little bit of dielectric grease on the nut for the starter cable. Okay, I used gray Scotch-Brite, which is about 600 grit, roughly, just to get rid of the dried residue, most of it at least. You can see where the seal is. You know, seal is kind of that inner ring that extends out to that crud. So I didn't want to take out material. I don't want to change the contour of that or the level of that plane. So it's pretty well cleaned now, and I'm going to move on to a metal polish just to try and cut down on the scratches, because that 600 grit's probably not as good as we want for a good seal. So we're going to clean that up a little bit more. I've got a turkey baster to pull out any of the debris that's fallen in there, just some real fine dust. But we'll get that cleaned up, polished, and then I think we are ready to put that bypass back on. Now that I've got it polished, we can see that we do have some pitting in the aluminum. It's kind of hard to get the right lighting to show it, but you can see it's just a little hazy. It looks like it's maybe a little dirty. It's not really dirty, that's just the surface finish being affected by the pitting. So it's not great. If I was rebuilding this from the ground up and doing any machine work, that would just be milled flat and we'd be fine. But of course we're not. Now I could remove the studs here and then lap that surface. That would be an in situ situation, or an in situ solution that would be okay. But I don't really want to go through that. I don't think it's necessary. It's disappointing that it is as pitted as it appears to be. But I'm going to give it one little bit more polish, and then I think we're just going to leave it be and just hope that the gasket seals that up as much as we need. And then we'll address it later if we really have to, and then I'll go the lapping route. But just something to be aware of, especially when you've got these face seals against aluminum. You want to be really careful not to scratch it, and you got to check for pitting. And if you have pitting, any more severe than this really, then you'd want to machine that or lap it flat or something. But I think we're going to be okay. I suppose we will find out. Finally getting into some of the more interesting stuff from a mechanical perspective at least. And this looks beautiful. Compared to how ugly the intake ports look, this is just phenomenal. Zero sludge, zero buildup of really anything anywhere. It looks really nice. I'm seeing zero effective wear on any of the cam lobes. Everything looks great. Just great. At least to my semi-untrained eye on the 2UZ. Things to note, you can see where the valve cover gasket has been leaking. There's definitely some residue around the top edge, but that's pretty mild. Where we really see residue is on this bottom edge. You can kind of see the buildup there. It's sort of hard to capture because it's pretty subtle, but all that film, that's just leaking valve cover gasket. And what I'm realizing is, yeah, there's some there, and you can see liquid pooling, so that would be just a primary spot for a leak to occur, and that's what appears to have happened. However, I think there's more of a leak coming from up here, and that has me thinking it's cam seals. And Slee did the 90K service on this last, and I think they would have done cam seals, but maybe not. And I know it's a bit of a pain on VVTI, so maybe that's why they didn't. But it's kind of got me thinking that may be the source of the leak in this corner, which is a bummer because that's a more significant job. So, yeah, I don't know. I guess we'll see exactly what the deal is, but I may have to come back in here and address that. All in all, though, looks really nice. So we're going to clean this up. I'll clean up this. We'll check spark plug torque. Those should be recently serviced, though, so I'm not expecting to find much. And then we'll lay down a new gasket. I'm realizing my RTV, my ultra black whatever RTV, is probably old, and I'm not sure I want to use that. So I may need to get some Toyota FIPG, although as I say this, I think I have some. So anyway, you've got to apply RTV, it looks like on the back there, anywhere there's a joint, because essentially along that joint you're not going to have good sealing from the gasket to the metal. So a couple joints there, a couple joints there, and then up here we've got one in the corner there and there, I assume. Yep. So that's it. You just got to remember to dab that RTV in that area. And we've got new gaskets. I've got a pair, but we're just going to do this one. And I'll keep the other one for a rainy day, or more likely when that side starts to leak significantly, which it is not yet. Okay, that was a whole lot of talking, and maybe that was boring, but I think this is pretty cool. This is the good stuff. Seeing the inner workings of the engine, the rotating assemblies, and good to see a car with 218,000 miles looking this fresh and clean on the inside. We're going to dive in and clean this off. This is the passenger side valve cover. Nice and oily, dirty, grimy. Not going to spend too much time on this, but I do want it to be nice and clean. And now is the time to do it. So we're going to hit it with a vacuum and some degreaser, I think. And then get it all back assembled. And we've got new grommets. There's one still stuck there. Each of these screws has a grommet, or an insulator, or a rubber washer, whatever you want to call it. So if you're going to replace the bolt, you also replace that insulator or washer. So we've got a new set of those. Get this guy off and we'll clean this up. Alright, we got our form-in-place gasket in place. I did have a tube of the Toyota stuff, so that's the Toyota black. You can see on the back side there. I got probably more than I needed back there, but that's fine. And then on the corners there, just trying to seal up the seams, where we got a metal-on-metal seam. And yeah, that's it. The rest I cleaned. Some of this is really hard. Like, that won't come off. So, I'm not going to mess with it. It's fine. Good enough for now. We're just trying to get a good seal here. Not making a show car. So, put the valve cover back on. And the valve cover is a little bit nicer looking now. A little better. Not perfect. I don't have a parts washer anymore. Mine broke, so haven't replaced that yet. So this is about as good as we're going to do for now. Just use some heavy-duty engine degreaser and then some all-purpose degreaser, just sort of to rinse that off. But yeah, that's it. This will go back on, and you need to reassemble that FIPG within 5 minutes. So I'm going to get going. Cylinder head cover gasket, aka valve cover gasket, installed. It's got nice little hold in or press fit little nubs, so that stays in nice and well. And now it's going on. Here we go. Here are the new bolts, and boy, don't those look nice. Well, that took a lot longer than I thought it would. The insulating washers or grommets allow a whole lot of compression, so as you tighten them as you go, if I tighten that one and then I tighten that one, now that one's loose again. So you kind of have to play this game where you're chasing yourself to tighten all of them, and as you tighten the next one, then your old one gets loose again. So took a while, probably 10 passes after I started using the torque wrench. Kind of crazy. But now they're all good, and they look really nice. So there's that. Here are the parts: gasket, bolts. You only need 9. I got 10 just because, hey, might as well. And then seal packing. You can see the version I've got there. Toyota has a few of these. These are the FIPGs. There are the parts you need. If you ever notice your valve cover loose, that might be why. This is the old, and that's the new. You can see the old one compresses. When that rubber compresses, the bolt head gets loose, and the torque holding the head cover lessens. You have less clamping load. Torque value on these guys is 53 inch-pounds. Not a whole lot of force. Torquing the ignition coils, 66 inch-pounds, 10mm socket. Okay, here's the situation on this. This is the rear bypass, the rear water bypass. It's upside down, so you're looking at the bottom side right now. This is the one that leaked. This appears to have been the leak area. You can see there's still some, I don't know if it's pitting or if it's just the gasket stuff stuck to it, but I think it is pitting, and I'm concerned about sealing because that's right where the seal goes, is right along that path, and it just looks terrible. So here's the other one, which was good and still looks pretty good. So on this one, I really want to get that nice and smooth. So I've got some vice blocks. I'm actually not sure what you call these, but they go into a vertical mill. they're very flat. So I'm going to take this with some 800 sandpaper. I've already hit this with 600 grit Scotch-Brite just to try and knock off some of the debris. But now I want to make sure that it's really flat. So I've got 800, and I'll use this as a sanding block. And I could use lapping paste and a lapping block if I had one, but I don't. So we're going to try this to keep it real flat, real smooth, and see if we can't get a nice good mirror finish between the 800 here. I think I have some 1200 up there by my sandpaper, and then I've got polish as well. Okay, done quite a few passes now, and doing a first check-in, wiping it dry. Still have some pitting, so on we go. Okay, we still have some, but we're getting better, which tells me we are removing enough material to start eating away at some of that pitting and getting back to a smooth surface. And we're going to keep going. Okay, I think we're at 5 to 6 little sessions now, and we've got most of the pitting removed, but still right about there, there's enough that I'm just not sure it's going to get a good seal. So I'm going to go just a little bit more. I think I'm going to do one more session and then call it good. Over on this side, I might do one pass because I think this is going pretty well. But that's about it, just to try and knock off some of that. It's hard because we want to keep this perfectly flat. Obviously that's not going to happen with me using this, but I'm hoping it's not going to get off far enough to be a problem, and that the improved surface finish here is worth this effort. I think we're going to call this good. So I've done a bunch of passes with 800 wet sandpaper, and then hit it with some aluminum polish, and we still have some pitting, but I think I'm really pushing my luck here, and if I take too much off then it's not going to seal anyway. So I think at this point I'm going to call it good, and if it leaks again in the future I'll just buy another one of these, and then I'll have perfectly flat surfaces that have a good surface finish. There's also a gouge on this side, which I think is just from handling, which is kind of a bummer. But I can't feel anything there. Obviously you can see it in the reflection, but I can't catch my fingernail on it with or without the gloves. So I think we're okay. We're now going to put this back on. Got the air intake pump, or air injection pump, whatever that is, installed there. I've got to torque down the fasteners. You'll notice that is still dirty. I didn't really bother to clean that. I just kind of lost interest. We've got the important parts clean. That one I'm just not as concerned about. So we're going to tighten down the fasteners there. Everything's connected. We need to do the air injection pump shortly. So I'm going to do that. We've got new gaskets that I'll show you in just a moment. And then we need to connect that to the hoses, of course. There's the pipes coming off the side. Then we've got a new coolant pipe coming in here. There's a new O-ring that I need to insert that right there. So I'm waiting on that, so I can't do that right at this moment, but that pipe goes from there this way, mounts there, and then goes there. So that's sort of the general arrangement of that. And then we are really close to being able to do the manifold. I think that's coming up next. So the manifold I need to clean, but otherwise that is ready to go. And then we are just about done. We're getting so close. And here are the air injection valves. This is these are the air switching valves. And we've got new gaskets. Part number there for you. And you need 4 of those. I thought I needed 2. I was wrong. You need 4. 2 there, and then 2 there as well. You could probably do just 2. I think you can leave these attached to the bypass, but I did not. I removed it, and I don't want to reuse the gaskets. So waiting on new gaskets for the outer sides there. Let's go install this, huh? Okay, just want to show you my winning combo here for getting these. This is a 1/4 inch drive a regular 10mm socket, and then a little extension there. I'm guessing that's 3 inches. And you can get to the bolts like this, and I can't quite line that up with one hand, but you can kind of see the socket wrench there. So you can get to them just like this. I fought with this for a while, just trying to get there, and it just didn't make sense, but that will get you behind there. So 84 inch-pounds, aka 7 foot-pounds. That's what the torque is for those with new gaskets. And yeah, again, 1/4 inch drive, 10mm with a little extension. Alright, quick change with the PCV valve, and man, this thing was on tight. Holy cow. So use the double wrench method. I've got, it's a 22mm nut there, using the closed end. I tried to do it with the open end and just couldn't quite get the right leverage with the double wrench method. But now I got it lined up nice, and then it came loose. But holy cow, that was a ton of force required. I really had to lay into that, and that's with, 2 inches or 2 feet almost of leverage. So there you go. There's a tip for that double wrench method, 22mm on the PCV valve. PCV valve and its cover, just a cushion kind of deal. No failure on this old part. I just figured I'm in here. I'm ordering a bunch of parts. Why not? Relatively cheap. So new part number. That's the old. That's the new part number. There's the orientation we ended up with. It's kind of an odd arrangement because you have to get it pointed that way. It's an NPT thread or it's some sort of pipe thread. So you get resistance at a varying angle, and you just have to get it tight and then pull it around to the correct position. So it's got quite a bit of flexibility in that joint though. So what I mean by that is if it gets tight and it's pointed that way, you can keep pulling it around. It's not going to bottom out. So you've got quite a bit of give there. Don't be afraid to crank it down. Okay, new cover installed, nice and protected, and now we're good to move on. At this point, I'm going to stop for the evening. We're going to clean up the manifold next, get that installed. I also need the gaskets for those 2 valves in the back and the O-ring for the crossover pipe here. Get that installed, get the hose connected, and I've got new vacuum lines coming for that as well. And we need the air assembly, the VSV assembly that needs to get tied in there as well. But then we're ready for the manifold to go back on, and then we've got to tidy up everything associated with that. Another small part that we're replacing here, it's the hose assembly for the air injection system. Relatively inexpensive hose set at $18, something like that, at the dealer with the big markup. So a lot less than that if you get it ahead of time online. And you can see the old one, I had to kind of tear it off the valves. And the new one is, of course, just super pliable and gummy. And the old ones, and you can kind of see that was starting to balloon out. So just a matter of time before those start leaking. And just figure, well, I've got it all apart, why not? New part. Okay, first pass, just a wipe down of the intake. Just to give you an idea. Still looks dirty. So, carbon choke cleaner. You could use all kinds of petroleum distillates or whatever this classifies as. You just need something that's going to break down some of that carbon. So we're going to spray that on a rag and just give it a quick pass, nothing too crazy. Just going to ensure that we get a nice good seal with our new manifold and the old intake obviously going back on. New O-ring installed in the coolant pipe there, fastened there, hose there, and then O-ring under there. Soap and water on the O-ring to help that slide in. Piece of cake. Cleaning up the manifold right before installation, and just remember you've got insulators that might be stuck in here, so just be sure to remove those. And you don't want to reuse these, so hopefully you've got new ones. And you want to clean that out, obviously. So we've got a shop vac, and then we'll get in there with some Q-tips even. Make sure it's nice and clean. Alright, manifold cleaned up, at least well enough. Not perfect, but good enough. Injectors installed with new insulators. Insulators were provided by FSI, who cleaned the injectors, but I also bought a set, so we've got extra insulators. So now we're going to install the fuel rail. I'm going to do this on the bench just because it's easier. I've got complete access. Everything is really easy to get to and see and all that. That's nice. So let's move on to the rails, and once the rails are installed on this, I think we're ready to transfer it over. I'll flip it over, get the gaskets on, and then back into the car it goes. Okay, rail is installed on this side. This is the passenger side, and we're going to do a quick check with the injectors, make sure that they swivel. That means that the O-ring's not bound up anywhere, and they all look just beautiful. Now I've got to go grab gaskets for this and prepare for the other side, and then the crossover. Finally, we've got the intake manifold ready to go in. We've got the injectors, fuel rails, we've got the gaskets. You can see, just kind of interesting for those that haven't seen it. That's how fuel gets in. Intake channels, very dirty. I just am out of time. I need to get this back together, so not going to clean that, which kind of irks me, but you know, it's fine. Not a big deal. We're not going for every last little horsepower we can get out of this thing, so a little bit of dirt and crud and stuff is just fine. So now we're ready to transition over. I've also got a new throttle body gasket, and you can see with the intake gaskets how much gasket there is exposed. On the old gasket, when we took it out, there was nothing, just nothing. It was even with this, and it was leaking. So that should be good. That'll be an improvement. And we are ready. So I'm going to toss this in the engine. I almost forgot. Important step. We got to take out the shop rags. So I'm going to take out the rags, and I'll just wipe them down. Again, the intake ports are real dirty, but we're not going to spend much time on that. Then we will finally be ready to lower the manifold on. Further and further along, I'm just going to highlight some of the parts that we replaced. Just some wear items. Number one, on this fuel line, I don't know if this is the fuel return. I don't think it is. Fuel feed line, maybe. Coming off the filter anyway. This green connector is not supposed to be reused. It's super cheap, so grab a new one from the dealer, take the old one off, install a new one. There you go. The clip over here, I left that alone. It took a lot more force than I thought to push this on, so don't be afraid to really jam it on there, and just be careful not to kink the hose, but that'll go back on there. And then we've got, of course, the PCV valve. I already talked about that. Oh, and I'm breaking my garage in the background here, sorry. Then we got the fuel vapor hose. This one's old, and you can see some cracks in it. That's fuel vapor, so good not to leak there. So we'll replace that. I'll reuse the clamps, I think, but we'll do a new hose there. And then we've got a bunch of new other hoses to go through, but I'll go through those as I install them in a few minutes. We are progressing along here. We've got the ventilation hose, that's new. There's your part number. We've got new gaskets on the fuel pressure regulator right there. One kind of weird gasket, but they're both one-time use gaskets, so get new ones of those. You don't want to leak fuel. And then over here we've got, of course, the VSV hose that's new. I'm not sure if that's the right routing. It seems kind of strange, but I wasn't sure how to make it reach otherwise. So if you know that's wrong, maybe let me know and I'll fix that later, but it seems to work fine now. This is the point in the video where you go, this guy is pretty weird. I was very excited to get this hose. I don't know why. On my 99, these hoses were always terrible. I just never bothered to fix them. On this one, they were pretty worn and cracked. It goes to the power steering VSV. Part numbers for the fuel damper or fuel pressure regulator, I'm actually not sure which it is now. But anyway, gaskets for that. There's the kind of funny one, that's the upper, and the lower is just a standard aluminum washer. I already tossed that, but it just looks like a little aluminum fuel washer. Okay, we're really getting there. I think this is the final rundown of new parts. So you can see just how the PCV stuff's connected. Ventilation hose there, that's fuel vapor hose, this is the other ventilation hose. Filters, get a new air filter, there's the old, there's the new, just OEM paper air filter. And what else did we have? New ventilation hoses there. Connected our steering VSV there. I am thinking that's about it. I've got this hose that I can't figure out where it goes. Number 5. I don't know where that goes. I can't figure that out. So I'm going to do one more pass looking for that. But otherwise, we are going to top this up with coolant. I've got a new radiator cap as well, so this is the old one. This will go away. And I'll clean up that top as much as I can. And then, yeah, fill it up with coolant and do some cycles, some heat cycles. Try and get that coolant circulated, make sure we don't have a leak, and we are done. Okay, we've got old oil cap, old radiator cap, part numbers, new radiator cap there, new oil filler there. Filler was leaking just a little bit, and on my 99, I experienced, when these get weak, they've got like a locking mechanism on it, and when they wear out, it can be really hard to engage it, and then you can't take it off. And that's what I ran into, and I had to break the thing off. So I kind of wanted to proactively address that. And like I said, there was just the faintest bit of misting around there, so it wasn't quite sealing all that well. And now that's solved. Okay, we've got the system all topped up. Radiator is full. Overflow is, yeah, not quite full, but close. I'm purposefully leaving a bit of airspace there because what's going to happen, there's a lot of air bubbles in the engine right now. Those need to work themselves out. Generally what will happen, as it warms up, they will escape through the radiator and then get replaced with fluid. That's the idea, from the overflow. So you want to leave space so that if this bubbles over, it doesn't immediately just drain. But at the same time, we want fluid there to be sucked in when we get those air bubbles out. I think that's it. I'm now going to connect the battery, seal the radiator, of course, and check for leaks, and I think we're good to start it up. Okay, we're live. It had to crank for a solid 4 seconds or so, maybe 5 seconds, but then it roared to life just fine. And I don't see anything crazy. I don't smell any leaks. I think we're looking good. Just humming along like normal. That's just great. Just great. There we can see it's still cool, obviously, so high idle. And there the fan just settled down, so the clutch is up to temp, I guess that is, or something. Looking good. So I'm going to let it run for a little bit, make sure there are no weird leaks or problems, and then we'll let it cool down, suck in some coolant, make sure that this is topped up, and then go for a quick test drive, and then we are done. Coolant leak completed. I bought a whole bunch of parts that I didn't really need to, but wanted to, just to baseline the vehicle and get familiar with the motor and ensure that things that could wear out have at least been addressed for now, or at least those that I thought of. So, not necessarily a cheap job, but really all that was needed was that little $4 gasket in the back. And that just tends to be how it goes. A little bit of scope creep. Alright, it's been a while, maybe 5-10 minutes. We're up to temperature. I'm going to turn it off now, let it cool down, and then later tonight I'll check for leaks, make sure everything still looks good, and then give it a drive around the block.